Imagine standing in the dazzling glow of a Hollywood premiere, the flashbulbs popping like fireworks, and hearing the king of rock and roll himself whispering promises of forever in your ear, only to turn away at the pinnacle of your youth. That was Debra Paget's reality. At 92, this silver screen icon has finally unzipped a secret so potent it reshapes Elvis Presley's legend and casts a new light on Golden Age Hollywood. Debra Lee Paget entered the world in 1933, cradled by a mother who still tasted the smell of backlot grease paint. From her first steps, Debra's life felt choreographed. Auditions before birthdays, dance lessons in place of dolls, and cameras tracking her every move. By age 14, when most girls were scribbling crushes in diaries, Debra was signing a long-term contract with 20th Century Fox, an achievement laden with as much peril as promise. Studio executives saw not a child but a commodity, a fresh face to sell tickets. In 1948's Cry of the City, 14-year-old Debra found herself across from hardened character actors, tasked with a scene that stunned even veteran crew members, her first on-screen kiss. The moment crackled with scandal, underscoring the industry's ruthless hunger for novelty, no matter the cost to a child's innocence. Then came 1950's Broken Arrow, a western that cast her as Morning Star, a young Native American maiden opposite James Stewart. She was 16, he was 42. Slathered in dark makeup and forced to don rigid brown contacts that blurred her vision, Debra inhabited a role that Hollywood garbed in exoticism and exploitation. It was a visually striking performance, but behind the scenes she winced at every uncomfortable lens change, powerless to halt an image machine that prized her youth and her suffering. Did you ever realize how cutthroat showbiz could be for a teenager? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. By 1956, Debra's star had climbed to dizzying heights. Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments granted her a moment in one of cinema's grandest epics. But it was Love Me Tender, Elvis Presley's first film, that spun the compass of her destiny. On set, Elvis wasn't merely another co-star. He was a cultural earthquake, striding into a new era of music and fashion. He watched Debra with something deeper than professional admiration, convinced she was the one to anchor his heart. Yet Hollywood's glitz masked a cage. Despite critical praise, Debra grew weary of one-dimensional parts, the exotic maiden, the helpless beauty, the silent object of desire. Fans plastered her with pin-up posters. Studio press releases reduced her to a glamour girl rather than a thoughtful artist. On the inside, she felt boxed in, her talent shackled by scripts that craved decoration rather than depth. In search of meaning beyond celluloid, Debra stepped away from acting. She experienced a profound spiritual awakening, embracing Christianity and eventually finding her voice as a host on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. Free from spotlight duress, she discovered the solace of authenticity, an escape from an industry that had commodified every inch of her. But as Debra retreated from Hollywood, another story was stoking tabloids, her liaison with Howard Hughes. To the public, Hughes was an enigma, an eccentric billionaire whose money built skyscrapers and planes, and whose whims could make or break careers. For Debra, his lavish gifts and electric charisma offered both security and suffocation. Hughes held sway over casting decisions and publicity campaigns, his favor a double-edged sword that advanced her prospects while tightening invisible chains around her personal freedom. It was against this backdrop of power and pressure that Elvis Presley, smitten beyond reason, proposed marriage. He courted her quaintly, visiting her mother, bringing flowers, speaking of a life far from limelight's glare. But Debra faced a crucible of conflicting loyalties, parental objections rooted in propriety, Hughes's unspoken demands, and her own yearning for self-determination. Ultimately, she said no. To choose Elvis, she felt, would be to trade one gilded cage for another, one fashioned by rock and roll mania instead of studio heads. Her refusal exploded into gossip columns. Some whispered that she spurned Elvis to deepen her ties with Hughes. Others claimed she sought to guard her newfound faith from tabloid chaos. Whatever the truth, the denial pierced Presley's pride. Heartbroken, he soon met Priscilla Beaulieu in Germany, a girl whose delicate features and midnight hair bore an uncanny resemblance to Debra Paget. Their likeness was more than coincidence, it wove a haunting narrative thread. Priscilla shared Debra's sculpted brows, pale skin, and dark sophistication. From the moment Elvis laid eyes on her, it seemed he was chasing a phantom of his earlier rejection, molding a younger echo of the woman who had slipped through his fingers. In marrying Priscilla, he was simultaneously building a new future and resurrecting an unquiet past. Over the decades, fans have speculated endlessly. Did Elvis ever stop mourning the one that got away? Did Debra's decision haunt her as much as it liberated her? Now, at 92, she's pulled back the curtain on a chapter of Hollywood lore that had grown mythic with each retelling. Her revelation does more than satisfy curiosity. It reframes the intimate contours of two legend-making lives. Today, Debra Paget stands not as a fated starlet but as the architect of her own story. She weathered the glare of fame, the allure of power, and the tug of love's promises, emerging with a faith and freedom Hollywood seldom affords its young. Her choice to refuse Elvis Presley was neither capricious nor cruel. It was an act of self-preservation, a declaration that no crown of stardom could sparkle bright enough to compensate for a lost sense of self. And Elvis? He carried that rejection like a melody he could never quite finish, channeling heartbreak into art that still resonates. In the end, their entwined fates remind us that showbiz glamour can both elevate and entrap, and that true courage often lies in turning away from the brightest lights in search of one's own guiding star.